Welcome and thank you for tuning in to Cryptids, Creeps, and Conspiracy. The following content may involve explicit language and materials, so listener discretion is advised. Jump. All right, welcome back, everyone. I am super excited. I am killing it. We have guest after guest after guest, and they're all new, and I'm super pumped because I have met him through our live feed with Farah. For anybody who went and watched the Uncuts on Mondays, you guys will recognize him as well. It is Eric from uNcomfortable. Anything that you want to let us know, now is the chance to do it.
Thanks, Natasha. I appreciate you having me on here. I'm Eric Szilagyi. I'm the host of uNcomfortable podcast. It's just known as uNcomfortable, but it is a podcast, so you have to say uncomfortable podcast. Topics that reside on the fringe of our reality is pretty much the catchphrase for it. Everything from spiritual awakenings, hauntings, UFO encounters, Bigfoot encounters, experts, recognizable names in the fields, just about everything under the sun, as long as it's uncomfortable. We cover it. Available on all the platforms. About 6 months ago, I started doing a video version of it as well on YouTube. So the audio and videos are available on YouTube, and then again, the audio just on all the major platforms.
All right, perfect. And like usual, everybody, he's been amazing, and he went ahead and provided me with all of his links. So for the norm, down in the description, you're going to have my sources that I have here that I use, and you're also going to have all of his links. So check that out and make sure that you go in, follow, and all of that. I'm sure I'll probably say it again at the end, but you know what? Do it anyway. And I'm super excited to have you on because I, too, make people very uncomfortable, but probably for a different reason.
Not necessarily. Don't sell me short, because even though I make people uncomfortable in the show, during my regular day life, I make people pretty damn uncomfortable too.
Perfect. Then we are made in the shade today. We are a deadly combination. And as per the norm, again, I have all of my cat ball sensors here. I always leave them on. Sometimes they're active, sometimes they're not. It really depends. But I always do leave them out there in case anybody does want to stop in and visit. They do trigger those occasionally. So I want to make sure that I have that available so they don't feel left out. They normally have their own mic too, but I moved all the stuff inside because it was hot. That being said, are you ready to attempt to make people uncomfortable?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. This topic that I picked, I thought it was perfect because when you really get down to it and you start digging into it, it sometimes makes me squirm a little and be like, what if, right? Who knows? And the truth behind it is also pretty menacing. So regardless of whether or not it was true, it was pretty screwed up all around. And I found this awesome article, and it is 10 telltale signs a changeling has replaced your child. So I had reached out to you and said, do you have children?
You did indeed.
Specifically because now we can evaluate the situation. Now, again, like I said, stories have gone on for ages of all kinds of weird things that could happen. And according to legends, a changeling is a fairy child left in a human child's place as the human is just snatched up and taken. Well, they don't just take it. You don't want to be confusing. You'd notice if there was just no baby. But they did one better. They're like, I'm going to take your baby and I'm going to one-up you. And here's my baby and you can keep it. Of course, I'm not really sure the logic there.
Is it actually supposed to be replaced with a baby from the fairy?
Occasionally, you might get something other than a baby.
Okay.
But either way, it has a pulse and it does move. So it is living. I guess you could put it that way. It's living. And the changelings, a lot of times they say that they're reported as being sickly, a little mischievous, or sometimes even aggressive children that basically were left out in the wilderness and even tortured in order to get their human version back. I'm going to be the one to make that call. If these alleged stories are true, the changelings often ended up in the grave, or at the very, very least, blatantly mistreated. We're talking mad abuse. We're going to go ahead and go into some signs that your kid is maybe a changeling. The first one is the baby has unusual features or birthmarks. So let's evaluate. Did any of your children have a birthmark or an unusual feature?
Negative. They had birthmarks, but they were no unusual features.
My child very well could have met this requirement because aside from being a behemoth, he got stuck on the way out, got a little road rash. So when he came out, he had what they call a stork bite or something. So he literally had a triangle that pointed down at his nose and went up his forehead to his hairline and crossed. He had a big triangle. And when he would cry or scream or get mad, that red spot would turn dark purple. So he looked like the guy from Avatar.
Yeah.
Kind of.
The airbender.
Think of virtually any baby that's born a cleft lip or something wrong with their nose. Or I know a lot of people that do have that purple that's even worse than my son, where it's like purple all the time. Or I know that I'm trying to remember what the technical term is for it, where the melanin is not even. And so you have all kinds of weird patterns.
Is it alopecia?
I think alopecia is when you're balding. Isn't it? What's that?
I don't know.
I can spell. Alopecia. Disease that causes hair loss. Yeah. So that's too, if they have some buggy or conehead babies or anything, whether one of your legs is shorter or any possible thing could be looked at as something wrong.
Okay, I got to interrupt you here. So at what point are we talking about the exchange? Where did that happen? Within your womb before they came out, or after they came out and you just weren't paying attention for a few minutes?
I wasn't able to find an exact time. So I believe that it could be either or. Back in the day, they would take the baby and they would do whatever they needed to do to it. When I had my son, that baby was in the room with me. He never left my side. He never left the room. So I always had eyes on him. But back in the day, they'd take your baby, you put him in a little baby bin, and sometimes you'd have a swapped at birth situation by mistake. But it never really specifies. But I do know a lot of times these fairy folk or the fae do get allotted a lot of mystical type powers. I don't believe that it's unheard of to possibly do it pre-birth, doing some kind of prenatal swap. It's plausible, but most of the times when you hear about it, it's you notice a difference. So there must have been something established first as that baseline, and then something changes.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, but I could see, bro. But I don't know how you would know the difference other than just being like, oh, something happened. Because I feel like if it was something that was drastically obvious, then you would have had to have seen a normal baby at some point to believe that your baby was a fae, right? I would hope. Who knows? I don't know. Back in the day, people were crazy. Germs were the devil. Literally.
Yeah.
That's always one thing, but it opened up a lot of doors, unfortunately. For me, example, me and all of the females in my generational tier, we all have orange. Okay, mine's orange. Theirs is red, like dark red. But mom didn't want that redheaded baby. It's a changeling. Something's wrong with this baby. I don't want it. It could be anything. If it's not what the mom wants, she could just be like, it's a changeling and just write it on.
So am I to understand that some of the digging into this that you've done indicates that people were willing to get rid of their child?
1,000%. In a very violent manner.
And then the child what shows back up again, only it's different.
I'll try to touch base on it, but I think we get into it later. I think it was probably more productive. The thought was, yes, I will do whatever I need to do to this baby to make that fairy bring mine back. And if the fairy didn't bring it back, I don't know what they did. Nothing was also set in stone to say for sure that fae mother would bring, or whoever would bring your baby back. They just said it could make them want to bring your baby back. So that's there's a lot of things. Once we get to the end, we'll see if there's any more lingering stuff. we still got 9 more steps to go through. But yeah, so we're off to a good start. I don't want to go too far in case we hit on it later.
Okay. I
Uh,
ask a lot of questions, so you're
oh,
probably gonna have to
I love
put me off till later. So
Oh, you're good. I will try my best. Just know that I might, what do they call it? Eat crow or put my foot in my mouth in case, because I don't have very good attention span. So although I did look at all these, like today, I also sat in a parking lot for 10 minutes today waiting for my kid to get out of practice, forgetting that he actually got picked up by another kid's mom. That's the kind of day I've had today.
okay.
Now, just another thing too that people sometimes consider, because a lot of times it's obvious, but imagine if you're a baby that has spina bifida or Down syndrome. You have no chance. Back then, you were already an outcast at birth. You had no home
All right.
to survive. And to me, that was a little sad. All right. Number 2 symptom. Your child has an aversion to iron. I know I can't say that word. I apologize.
An aversion to iron?
Yeah. Not for the vitamin sense. I don't know. But so it's pretty much been very long associated with like anti-magic. It's a weakness to fairy folk and paranormal and demons and all of these things where they'll put up the iron bars and the horseshoes and all of that stuff to deter anything that is supernatural. And one of the things, this amazes me. They would take a pair of iron shears, leave them open inside with the baby, in the crib with the baby. What are you like?
Do you have a time period where this stuff was supposedly going on?
And in some areas, a lot of people do still actually believe it, but this has been a long stretch of time. Think the time frame of Jack and the Beanstalk, and it's more like over the Irish. And oh my God, I got to drop these names with that letter because I can't do it. But it's just part of their like heritage and their culture.
Okay.
I mean, the faith folk are very, very important to people generally over Scandinavia, Wales, Greenland, Iceland, all of those type of areas were
Sure.
very, very big on that. And along with that, then came the changeling. It's been a thing for a very long time. The medieval stuff is where it really got gnarly. I still can't wrap my mind around. Now, if it was like a newborn, okay. I don't think anything's going to happen with a pair of shears in their grip. But if that baby's like flipping over, crawling around, standing up, you're leaving a pair of scissors.
Yeah, not something you would find in Dr. Spock's book about how to raise a baby.
Another thing too is, I guess technically it doesn't say they have to be sharpened. So maybe we can give them a little bit of the doubt.
Because you've gone to the store and bought dull shears,
But how often?
and then you sharpen them yourself when you need them.
But how often did you get shears back in the day, specifically made of iron? Did you really use them?
I think depending on the time frame, I think things made out of iron was probably pretty common because that was a commonly used and easily manipulated metal. But
Yeah, I was just trying to give them a little bit of credit. I was trying to stretch as far as I could. I know that's not far. I got tiny arms, but I was trying my best there. The theory on the shears is the reason they left them open was not only that the iron would repel the fae folk, but leaving them open would then create that cross inside of it. And so they thought that that was like a double whammy. Even if it wasn't necessarily a fae, if there was anything there, it would protect the baby. Or the baby would not respond well, and that would trigger, okay, this is not a human baby because it's freaking out over this pair of scissors.
I would have thought a metal crucifix would probably have done
But I don't think back
all.
people, when this all started, this is pre-Catholic smear or spread, whatever way you will look at it, either way. But it's before that time, I believe, because a lot of times once the Catholicism came through and all of that, they tried to kind of poo-poo and snuff out this type of lore and belief. So I think that if you had a crucifix, you wouldn't necessarily believe in the fae in general. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
kind of like one without the other. One's not necessary because you don't believe the other exists.
Okay.
If that
Fair
helps.
enough. Fair. Fair.
All right, you ready? This is one of my I check the box. Checkity check check. Your child is left-handed.
I'm left-handed.
What about your kids? Are your kids left-handed?
My son is.
Oh, see, changeling. We're all changelings. Me, you, take them all out. Which I haven't quite figured that out because, ironically, I'm left-handed. My dad's left-handed. My mom's left-handed. My brother's left-handed. The only one that's not is my oldest sister, and that was we figured she was dominantly left, but in the time that she was around, they forced her into using her other arm. So then she started being more right-handed than left.
Yeah, that was still the thing when I was growing up, but for whatever reason, I fought it, and so throughout life, just by necessity, I became pretty much ambidextrous because most
Same.
things are.
Yep. Some things I do one, some things I do the other. But it's like when I played softball, they taught me to pick it up and throw it with my right hand. So whenever I had a mitt on, I threw with my right hand. But if I dropped my mitt, I'd pick it up with my left hand and throw it. So I've
That's
got
exactly when I was trying to get my son to figure out, because he was using both hands, and when we were getting ready for him to start playing t-ball, it was like, just drop the mitt. I'm going to throw a bunch of grounders at you, and you just pick it up as fast as you can and throw it back to me.
Yep.
Thinking that the dominant hand would show itself and would be the hand he picked more times than not to throw it. And it was literally every other one. So it didn't matter.
We found out that my aim was better with my right arm than my left. It was just something that was strange. But unfortunately, back in the day, the stigma was very, very strong against left-handed people. And they pretty much suffered consequences such as torture, drowning, or poisoning. I just can't imagine being poisoned or drowned or tortured just because you're left-handed. That's it.
Yeah, that seems a bit over the top. We're probably persecuted as witches at some point in time too for being left-handed.
I'm left-handed and I have red hair. I was doomed.
Born soulless and without a hand, the right hand.
I'm like the petri dish of devilry over here. Now, another thing too that they say is, aside from the physical attributes, if you have a visit from a fairy child, they say that it actually sucks all the good fortune out of the entire house. So if the baby's born and then a whole bunch of bad stuff happens, that baby, even if it looks totally cherub, is a changeling. I would also like to point out that back then, postpartum depression was not a thing.
It was not recognized as a thing.
Yeah. To them, it was not a thing. It was a demon. If a parent had postpartum, then obviously there's a lot of things that are going to happen in that household that don't appear to be very lucky. And then it has nothing to do even with the kid itself. The kid could be an angel baby, but if all these bad things happen, then changeling, done.
You think about all the number of things that can transpire during bringing in a new child into the world. Because the guy in the relationship, the husband or whatever, he's going to want to get back to being able to do the things that they do that gave him the child to begin with. Typically, the woman is not going to be very receptive to that initially. If she's going through postpartum depression, that's not going to be something that's on her brain at all. He's going to be unhappy. She's going to be unhappy. I think there's a number of things that just the introduction of a new child into a family, it's a daunting thing at first.
Especially back in the day when birth control wasn't a thing. So a lot of these people did have children very close together.
And sheep. They had a lot of sheep too.
So I am an Irish twin. They had my sister. Doctor said, you can't do this. Dad said, shut up, you're doing it anyway. And here I am, surprised. But I did think it was ironic that it's called an Irish twin when two siblings are born within the same 12-month period. That's also something to keep in mind, that it is in that region. Along with the bad mojo and the bad moods and all of this chaos with the brand new baby, they also blamed changelings for family poverty, enticing these people to get rid of the children because they can't afford them. Now, anytime you add a mouth to feed into a family, it's going to get more expensive. Again, something that has absolutely nothing. This baby did nothing. This baby's a cherub. It doesn't cry. It just whatever. It doesn't sing. But because it brought more hardship and more, like, a greater poverty level, it is now a changeling and it is frowned upon.
Yeah, I can attest to having two kids. Finances absolutely go to hell because everything is. Yeah, even 28 years ago when mine first came out, things were expensive.
Yep.
And yeah, it's.
I can't figure it out. So I'm number 2 of 4. So things were pretty tight growing up. And I've got one breathing kid, and he eats enough to be like 4 children. I can't even imagine if there was another one because I wouldn't be able to feed it.
I'm sorry, did you say one breathing kid?
If this one goes off down here, that's typically my kid's fault. So,
I'm sorry. I had no idea.
I let everybody know. To be fair, they didn't think I was ever going to be able to have one that made it. He's actually a freak of nature, and it's a whole crazy story. But he has 4 siblings that didn't make it. So, yeah, but they don't go far. They hang out, especially around their birthdays. They really like to be active. So they're always here with me. They could do without the 2 a.m. mommy wake ups because that's creepy, but at least I know they're here. But yeah, so that's that. Oh, okay, ready for here's the next symptom. You're going to like this one.
Okay.
Your baby cries all the time. Really? Colic, anyone?
That
Well, they still cry a lot.
still cry a lot.
And I'm like, that constitutes a changeling?
That's what I really wish that we could like nail down, like when in history, the point in time where these things were coming up, because those are some very, very, very closed-minded and very non-intellectual views to be having towards these things.
Exactly. So they say that they've been popular for like thousands of years. And like I said, they still have some places where they believe it to this day. Like they still have all that on there. And
What strikes me, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but what strikes me is if these communities, these cultures that are believing this stuff, if they are taking the time to believe in Fae and all of the things that they can supposedly do, yet they're overlooking and pushing out of the way some of the most normal things in life for a child to come into this world. It's like, where are their brains at?
so the crying thing actually does have a theory. They had a theory behind it. And their theory was if the child was brought here from the fairy realm, they were missing their home and their family. They're in a stranger's home in a place they don't recognize, and they just miss being home.
Okay.
And so they cry. It's like when you babysit, you leave your kid with a babysitter for the first time. And sometimes they just cry and cry and cry till mom shows up or dad shows up, and then they simmer down. Only in this case, in theory, that is not mom or dad. So they don't recognize them. So they just keep crying.
Okay.
Nothing soothes them. Now, I did want to point this out. I found this thing here that there's a book, Fairy and Folktales, and it was written in 1888 in Ireland. And then there's some rural Germany type demonic exchange, not really fae, but more demonic. And that was in 1924. And even in 1980, there was somebody in Egypt where the people in oh my gosh, I can't even. Hassan M. el-Shami, reported that many people in Egypt still believe that jinn would still be infants and replace them with their own. Same type of thing, just a different entity depending on what region you're in. And even down in Nigeria, they had some that they believed that the Fae were swapped out, and that's why sickle cell anemia was an issue. It was the people that suffered from sickle cell weren't from here. They were brought in from some other realm. So they had some, back in the day, some logic. If you don't know anything about genetics or germs,
yeah, there was a little bit of reasoning going on there.
Exactly. And according to one Swedish story, a particular changeling child exhibited incessant crying along with other symptoms, which it doesn't mention, but making it impossible for the poor mom and dad to care for the child. But thankfully, unlike some stories, this mother only threatened to do the baby harm instead of actually doing the baby harm. And the fairy mother returned the real baby before any harm was done to the kid. So that's like the best possible outcome. Which it could be maybe they just grew out of their colic. Do babies do that?
Grow out of colic?
Yeah, how does colic work? Do you
Thankfully, we never had to deal with it with either of ours, but I always thought that was just something that it hung on until it was gone.
That's what I was like, figured maybe it was as an age thing. Maybe they age out of it. Otherwise, you'd have a bunch of toddlers with colic, right? And
Yes.
adults, technically. Hey, guys, if you've ever dealt with colic, how does it work? Send me a message to my email. Now, they did want to note that a lot of people do understand that a child naturally needs to eat a lot. But a changeling child, they seem like a bottomless pit, like my kid. Maybe my kid's a changeling. If he didn't look so much like his father, I would say he's a changeling. But they say it just devours everything. It's like a hungry hippo / Pac-Man baby. And that's what I'm getting in my head. Which, again, then causes more poverty in the family because the kid's wolfing everything down and they can't keep it said. So then poverty, kid eats a lot, boom, changeling. Now, they do say that even if a kid maybe eats like a bird at first or eats a normal amount, and then all of a sudden, not like a gross bird exists, but just randomly starts eating a bunch of food, oh, changeling. Have they met my kid? I'm pretty sure that mine's hitting the box. What about you? You're still hanging in the human zone?
Oh, my son's 6'5", I'm 5'9". You know, there's possibility. He does look like me, but just a much taller, much bigger version of me.
How old is he at 6'5"?
He is just turned 28.
Okay,
Yeah,
I would have
just
never
turned
guessed
28.
28-year-old kid. Okay.
What's that?
I said I would have never guessed you had a 28-year-old kid. Let me wrap my head around that real quick.
Oh dear, I'm 59 years old.
Oh, really? You're like almost the same age as my husband. So you're 2 years older than him. That makes more sense. My kid, he's about 5'8", but he's only 12.
Okay.
But dad's up there, so we're thinking he's probably going to hit 6'3" at least.
My son, like when you would take him to the doctor and they would measure him and weigh him and all that stuff, it was always in the 97th, 98th, 99th percentile. And at the time that I coached Rocket League football and middle school and high school football for a lot of years. And at the time that he got old enough to want to start playing in the Rocket League, Pee Wee League, he was a full helmet taller than everybody else. You have these parents that come up and they're complaining that they're afraid their kid's going to get hurt. And it's okay. So if you're afraid they're going to get hurt, you shouldn't have them playing football. Have them play tennis or something else.
Swim.
Because football's a contact sport. And we're not going to change the rules because you're afraid your kid's going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But inevitably, they would always say, what if they put him up against that guy? That kid's a freak. And yeah, that's my freak. And you don't have to worry because your kid's never going to play.
Now, we've established mine's probably a little more changeling than yours from right now on our scale, our Richter scale. And I have this way that they used to try to draw out a changeling. Now, the kid really likes to eat. It's super hungry. So what better way to find a way in the kitchen to make your kid identify itself? So they said that they would... I haven't quite figured out how they did this, but it's just examples. So cooking in eggshells would make the baby laugh. And if the baby laughed, it was exposed as a changeling, and it would force the fairy mother to return and swap kids automatically. It's like a get out of jail free. If your kid laughed, cooking, but I'm like, cooking in eggshells. Do you like put the eggshells in the food?
That's the way I'm taking it. Cooking
It's like, are you have like a little tiny, like little like soup, or kind of little egg over a little fire?
Yeah, no, I think cooking in is their way of saying that they're leaving the shells in the
But
food.
yeah, so that's supposed to be one good way to know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was strange. All right, you ready for the next one? That was good
Yes.
too. Your child starts misbehaving.
That's it.
So it says many stories state that a sudden change in a child's personality, sometimes it'd be they're thriving, they're good natured, all of a sudden they become like this crazy, terrible to demanding extra food or pulling tricks and just being a dick.
So like going through the terrible twos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. So kid good, terrible twos, changeling, you're out of here. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure my kid is pretty docile. I have no idea how I spawned him because I am a monster. I have always been a monster. I am surprised my mother did not kill me when I was little because I'm talking, she would try to give me medicine as a child. And it would take 2 people because one of them had to fold my arms. They had to put me in front of them while they're sitting down, wrap their legs around my legs, wrap their arms around my arms, and they would have to stick their head. They'd have to force my head back and stick their head on my head while the other ones squeezed my cheeks and crammed the medicine in. And I would kick and scream and bloody noses. And yeah, I was a beast. Heads up, I also found out later, hey, I'm bipolar. That might have something to do with it.
Is that something that pops in? Is that something that shows early in children?
Typically, people don't notice it until it can differ. It could be a lot of times in the early ones, they say, oh, it's like hormones or behavioral or whatever. Usually, they don't even diagnose bipolar until you're at least in your early to mid 20s, which is bullshit because we knew I had the same symptoms and everything since I was like 11. We knew something was wrong, but they wouldn't diagnose me. They just kept saying, oh, it's hormones, it's this, it's that. And just there wasn't the help and the resources to get me what I needed. So I was just a monster until I finally was an adult and they knew exactly what was wrong with me. But a lot of times it's usually like late teens to mid 20s is usually when that kind of creeps up. Because yet another interesting symptom is your child is unusually intelligent.
That could be a problem.
When I first read that, I was like, so that's what doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me. Although, so a child that had physical issues was the most common, but if a kid was too quick at learning, it was another thing to say, oh, it's like an old soul. Now, this is where a story comes in that I get a kick out of. So this one states that after being told that her children were not in fact her own, a mother was instructed to listen to her children talking to each other to see if they spoke about things that they were too young to know about. So too much adult knowledge can reveal that a child is an immortal fairy, making it basically a good trap to expose the fairy. So they're saying, put them in a room with her if they understand. But I'm going, if this, again, tail end, there's no birth control, there's no nothing. So you're just a baby farm and you get to that end. So you're already hitting, you've got a new baby. You've got maybe 10 more mouths to feed. You've got the poverty. You've got this, you've got that. But that baby is growing up around older children. And a lot of times they do adapt a lot faster. They walk faster. They talk faster. They pick up on things because they don't want to be left behind. It's just some kind of genetic thing where I've noticed it from people that I know where it seems like the younger they are, the more they want to follow the big kids. And when you follow the big kids, you hear what the big kids say.
Yeah.
Dude, and all of that. So I'm wondering, do they stick them in a room and see if they tell any dirty jokes? How much adult knowledge are we talking here?
I just have an immense amount of problems with the rationalization behind the cause and effects of these changelings.
Like what constitutes two facts? What constitutes and what about kids that just were naturally born extremely intelligent?
My son never talked baby talk.
Yep, my son never did either.
My daughter, complete baby talk. My son was running through the house at 9 months. He was 10 pounds when he was born.
Philip, okay, we have the same kid. Are we sure? Can I see a picture of this child? I want to make sure we're not talking about the same kid. Maybe it's like a time traveler and I ended up with your spawn too.
And I did an interesting little dive into college when both my kids went to college, because everybody's under the impression that they're going to go to school for 4 years. And quite simply, that is not the case.
When I graduated high school, I graduated early only because
I did too. I graduated as a junior.
my first baby, I got pregnant in high school and it ruptured my fallopian tube. And so I had to have emergency surgery and I like flatlined. It was a big catastrophe. And I just couldn't go back to school after that. I just couldn't. So I graduated early. I still graduated with too many credits. And had I stayed all year, I would have graduated high school with my associate's degree. Yes. And I found this other story here and I thought it was funny. So another story is the fairy in question was prone to making mean faces and taunting people for no apparent reason. In addition to the other symptoms, fairy changelings tend to be rude, perhaps because they don't see the need to be polite to humans. Like they're a bum. So I guess if your kid's a bully, they're a changeling.
Then that could have put me at one point in my life to being a changeling.
Oh, I was angry. I'm hitting all these boxes. I'm like, check, check, check. I don't know any of them that I haven't checked yet, except
my favorite job I ever had was being a bouncer at a bar.
now they do say another sign is that your child is unusually withdrawn. Now my kid is pretty shy, but they say people expect children to be playful and lively. So when somebody's particularly quiet or withdrawn, they get a little concerned. So today we have diagnoses for people that do have some issues in social situations like autism, Asperger's syndrome, like the obsessive compulsive. But back in the day when the stories were popular, those symptoms were said to be signs of a changeling. Go figure. And this connection may have led to the prevalent myth that filling seeds could be used to trap fairies because they wouldn't be able to resist coming out of hiding to count them all. I've heard the same thing with vampires. Was it rice? They're rice or something? I think it's rice. And you throw it and supposedly they have to pick it all up. And then there was the movie, with Jennifer Aniston, Leprechaun, where they throw the shoes and the leprechaun has to match all the shoes and he's like, son of a bitch. And he's like going through the shoes.
Yeah.
Now, it's just something that now they're attributed to common medical conditions, but they shed some really, really terrible light on how children were treated with those same inhibitions back then.
And there's also a segment of the population that tends to not bloom or blossom until they get a little bit older. So if they were just a little quiet or shy, maybe it was just because they weren't ready yet.
Yeah.
And they weren't suffering from anything.
And that was actually the last sign. So that was just this article here that I had of just all the signs that we had. So there's some pretty gnarly stories out there where one was a woman believed that her child was a changeling. And again, the thought was, if I cause harm to this child, the Fae mother will hear it some magical way and appear to then bargain and give me back my child. So they would like boil them in water and drown them and burn the bottoms of their feet. Like they would do horrible, horrible things to these children and sometimes they would take them and they would just ditch them in the woods and be like, oh, I'll come check in 2 days and see if it's the same baby.
Yeah. I've always had a bit of a penchant for for medieval times. It's always been, would have had a choice of when to live. I'm drawn to that time period, but it's quickly going out the window.
I could never do it because 1, indoor plumbing, 2, central air, 3, the biggest factor would be, had I been born in any other time, if I was even born about 10 to 15 years before I was born, I would have died when I was 18 because nobody knew how to address the problem that was wrong with me. It
Yeah.
didn't exist. People didn't know. People would literally, I would have just fallen over from internal bleeding. And they would have been like, natural causes.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, it's super, super crazy. And there's a movie out there. It's called The Changeling. And I want to watch it because I haven't seen it yet. But it's got Angelina Jolie and Christine Collins in it.
I've
Now,
seen it, but it's been years.
yeah, and they say that it's actually based on events that is the Walter Collins case. And I don't know a whole lot about it. I didn't delve into that one because I figured if I delved in too far on top of the 10 signs, we'd probably be like really deep. So I didn't want to go too crazy. But it's just these things are all over the place. They're in Scotland, they're in Ireland.
And the unfortunate thing is, it could have been something as mundane as, oh, here's this old wives' tale, and let's develop a cartoon around it.
Yep.
But then you'll have the segment of the paranormal community, people who fancy themselves to be influencers in this realm, and they'll start drawing associations to, see, they're telling you the truth. They're putting it right there in front of you, and you're too goddamn dumb to know it. And that's quickly becoming an area of contention for me with all the, as I said before, I've covered pretty much the gambit of paranormal. And you can draw an association from one thing to another, completely different things, completely unrelated, but you can find something that will allow you to draw. And if you're smart enough and you're a good enough bullshitter, you can convince a lot of people that, oh my God, yeah, he's right. Holy crap.
1000% agree with that. And some of the stuff I struggle because I try to keep an open mind. And for everybody who's been listening for a while, if not, you'll get the hang of it. Welcome to the show. I try to look at it very open. Even if you might bring me an idea and I might be like, this dude's a fucking idiot. I don't know what he's talking about. He's so full of shit up to his eyeballs. But I'm still going to be like, okay, let me hear your side. Or I might be like, this guy's got it. It's golden. He knows exactly what's going on. We are on the same page. But I'm still going to be like, but what about this? What about this? I want to get as much out there as possible. And a lot of times, not only were these fairy children replaced with fairy children, there's some stories and some lore that believes that sometimes they would swap your baby with an elderly fae that wanted to be like, kind of like instead of sending your great Aunt Gertrude, sorry, Gertrude, if you're in here, great Aunt Gertrude to a home, you'd send them to the human world and steal a baby because you don't. And imagine, how would you not notice a raunchy old man in a baby's body?
Well,
because they're breastfeeding. Let's think about this.
I'll be completely transparent. The fae is not something that I've ever spent much time looking into. I know where they originate from. I know the cultures that believe in them pretty heavily. So I can't really speak to what are the known supposed components to fae. Are they able to transcommute? Apparently in utero, are they able to manipulate the way they are seen? Fae have always been, to my knowledge, very small. Are they able to present as a full-sized child?
I think that there's now, okay, hold on, let me think here. Growing up, I was convinced they were real. They were real. I was 6, 7 years old, and I was setting fairy traps, mopo. Like, I was all about it. I was gonna catch me a damn fairy, and that was gonna be that. And I was gonna prove to everybody that fairies were real. I don't know why I was so obsessed with fairies, but I was. And then ironically, as I grew older, I started noticing how sensitive I was to the paranormal and all of this crazy stuff. And I sometimes almost wonder if maybe because of some of the things that I picked up on when I was younger or saw or heard, maybe the fairy tales didn't seem so out there to me because I had seen things that clearly people had told me that they weren't real, but I saw them. So I guess it opened my mind a little more. I also don't think that it's just one batch of a fae is a fae is a fae. I would say it's probably, you got to think in theory, most of the time they are magical creatures or beings or however you want to look at it. And if they possess that type of magic, what's to say they couldn't shrink, grow, do some kind of cloaking, whatever the case may be. I don't know what they can and can't do. But I would imagine that they have different species, just like you would have, say, Bigfoot. You have Bigfoot, you have Sasquatch, you have Yeti, you've got skunk ape, you've got boogers, you got all these different types in all these different regions. Then why not? And just give people that are into the extraterrestrial. There's so many different variations of grays. The basics are lizard people and the grays, and there's some other ones out there that people typically go to. But who's to say that if they do exist, they don't have those different species? It's just like people. We have, okay, I don't know what the term is, so I'm sorry if it's been the way, midgets, little people, I don't know, dwarfs, I don't know what they're technically called, so I'm sorry. But so you have that, but then you have these people that are literally classified as giants that are 7, 8 feet tall. But then you have most of us that are in that average. So even if the fae was a thing, who's to say that there's not some that are taller and some that are, or maybe some of them can do certain things. Maybe some can cloak and some can't. I've heard some that have more of they control like the water or like sprites and stuff like that have those different abilities. And I sometimes feel that anything that kind of relves into the paranormal supernatural range, they do have some variations. Even I've heard a lot, I know it's been popular recently, is Dogman. And I've heard different stories and firsthand encountered from people that have experienced these. And some say red eyes, some say yellow, some say orange, some they have this vibrational thing. I've heard, I believe Matt that I did in my 412 episode or 412, then it's, oh crap.
Yeah.
But I've wondered even with them, there is also the conspiracy that they are created. They don't just exist. It's a government experiment or whatever. Regardless of how these things come about. And one thing I placed on them, again, I just like to throw things out there. What if they have different color eyes because they're different breeds? Just as you have a poodle and a Great Dane and a Golden Retriever, what if the red-eyed ones can do this, the yellow ones can do this, and they have different abilities, and whatever genetic thing that makes that happen also alters something with their physical features.
Yeah, Dogman has been a difficult one for me to. I had a number of paranormal experiences throughout my life, starting with an early obsession with UFOs, and then as I got into my early teens and stuff, I started to have actual things that I consider to be experiences with the paranormal. Anytime I've ever delved into the Dogman, the people that I have talked to have inevitably left me wanting, because their experience was either relayed in a way that there was not much emotion. Now, could you imagine emotionally how you would feel if you were standing in front of an 8-foot tall, muscular canid standing on 2 feet? To tell me that story and to not emote at all and just be like, yeah, I turned around and ran and I outran it.
You need to reach out to Matt. I can't ever pronounce his last name, but Matt E. His information is it's a 2-parter that I did. You really need to interview him. He is amazing for starters. He's super cool. And when he told me his story about his encounter, and it was like when he was like in his teens, like late teens, I think. And you can hear it. This man saw something. No matter what the hell it was, he saw something terrifying. Like, he was in tears by the time he was like, you could hear it in his voice that sometimes he had to stop a couple times and then start because he was having a hard time conveying it and I mean, it was because I have a lot where, like you said, you're going, yeah, there's no way. There's no way. And I was very skeptical as far as now what it is, because then again, to me, that kind of drags in werewolf, hellhound, dogman. So to me, there's a lot there that I have not personally dug into to make a decision. But his story, the way it's so genuine, and he is very emotional, and he has some difficulty sometimes getting it out. But it's a great encounter. You should seriously go check him out.
I will. I will.
I do got to ask though, one question changeling related, and then something not changeling related because we're going to backtrack. But what would you do if you say on your son's, or say you're older and you're like on your deathbed and your son comes to you and he's, Dad, I am a changeling. What would you do?
If it's a personal question, my son has never changed from the sweet kid that he was to the adult that he is now. I'd be like, fuck, I don't care. Okay.
Yeah.
And I still paid for everything for your first 20 years of your life, and I still took care of you, and you're mine.
And if they're so young, they're not going to remember anyway. What if they were changing and the Fae would visit them in their dreams or something to see them grow, watch from a distance? Why do they ever swap them at any point? Oh, thanks for raising them through the teenage years, sucker. Years back.
Got them through the most expensive part.
No,
The Fae dollar doesn't go as far as it used to.
Fae to euro currency exchange, guys. Let me know. But yeah, that's just something that I always wonder about. Now, you had mentioned that you have had some paranormal experiences, so I can't in good conscience finish up here without asking you, what would you say your most prominent and, the word I'm looking for, shocking to you, like a realization that, oh shit, this stuff is real. What would you say your biggest encounter was?
I guess it's not my biggest encounter, but it was the most decisive. It's the one that solidified for me
Oh yeah.
that there are things that can reach out from beyond what we know. My dad was hit and killed by a car trying to walk home drunk from a bar.
Shit, I'm sorry.
When I was 21, and obviously the whole thing sucked, right?
Yeah.
But about 9 months after that, I started having experiences within the home, which is the home that I'm now back currently living in, that were very, very pointed, very, very directed at it being my dad who was interacting with me, which years later, once I started analyzing and thinking about things, surprised me, because I would have thought that if something would happen, it would happen very recent from the time they passed, before they moved on. And like I said, it was probably about 9 months. And it was not just one, but it was a number of things that just, honestly, it answered the question for me that they can, for whatever reason, still reach out. And it was, I guess I can give you the story real quick. I didn't realize that my parents were not in a great place. I was an only child. They hid it well, that they were not like particularly happy with each other, but I don't think either one of them knew what to do without the other. So it was just, and my dad, he was a weird alcoholic. He didn't drink very often. It was like once every 3 months. He'd open a bottle and it would be gone, and he would still try to function, but he wasn't like an everyday drinker. Didn't drink beer all the time. It was just every once in a while. And like I said, he got drunk and he tried walking home from a local bar, and got hit and killed. Went and identified the body. And that year in July, he died in October. I had bought him a mariner's crucifix because him and my mom always had a boat that they would go up on the summers. So when I was getting I got his wallet, I got his pocket knife, and I got the mariner's crucifix back. And then I just started wearing it all the time. And it was like kind of had a gold chain that was like a rope.
Yeah.
Not a big rope, but it was
Well, like
a thin rope.
Gold type thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it was getting caught on the fabric of my shirts, and it was getting caught on the blankets in the bed, and it was starting to fray a little bit. So I ended up and I went and bought another rope for it. And then I decided to start taking better care of it. I would take it off at night. I would take it off when I'd take a shower. I just like trying to keep it from the same thing happening. And I went to take a shower, took it off, put it on the countertop in the bathroom, quite a ways away from the sink. Got in, took the shower, got out, toweling off, and went to grab it, and it was gone. And I immediately thought that it was hooked on the terry cloth of the towel, and couldn't find it on there, and it didn't fall off onto the floor. And retraced my steps and kept thinking, did I have it on or didn't I have it on? I was absolutely sure that I had it on. Then I looked down at the sink and I was like, shit. So I went out in the garage and I got a plumber's wrench and I took the gooseneck off, thinking that it went down the sink and got caught in the gooseneck. Wasn't in there. Continued to look for it for quite a while and just never could find it. During this time, like I said, 9-10 months had gone past. And I don't know if you've ever been divorced, but
That's twice.
so there's a point after a divorce or during a divorce where men and women both, they go off the rails a little bit, and they want to go catch up on the things that they've been missing.
Oh.
So they get a little loose with their morality maybe, and they just start sowing the seed, as it was. It shocked me that my parents, after talking to my mom, that my parents were not in a good space and hadn't been for a long time. So she started seeing somebody about 8 or 9 months after my dad died, which I thought was really, really too quick. But looking back on it now with the way the relationship was, made sense. So I was living in the house alone at the time that I lost the necklace, and I got ready to go out on a date. It was summer. I had a really nice tan going, and I went put on my favorite white button-down shirt. Got it buttoned up, and it got to the top button, and the button popped off. And I stood in front of the mirror, and I would have looked like Guido if I didn't have that button. So I wanted to make sure that, and so I was like, shit, I know where my mom kept her sewing basket, and it was in their old bedroom, in my mom and dad's old bedroom. And she had already started spending a lot of time at this new guy's house, so she wasn't always back at the house.
Yeah.
And when she was gone, I would always close the door because I was not ready to see the pictures of my dad that were in the bedroom, because I didn't want to deal with the whole emotional thing.
Yeah.
I walked down the hallway, took a deep breath, opened up the door to the bedroom, and sure enough, there was a picture of my dad and me in Traverse City, Michigan on vacation when I was like 12. And it's the first thing I see. And then it dawned on me. I said, it's not as bad as I was expecting. It wasn't like I was overwhelmed with a flood of emotion or anything. It was just like, all right, I can do this. So I went, sat down on the edge of the bed. In front of me was a dresser with a mirror. I reached down underneath the bed, and it was an old cookie tin that my mom kept all her sewing stuff in. So I pulled it up, set it on the bed, opened it up, got a needle, got thread out. And I looked up in the mirror, and on the wall behind me was my dad's military photo. And it was a black and white picture, but like back in the day, they used to send them off and they'd use pastels to make it colorized, but it was really pissed out. And that picture was like, in the mirror, was behind my right shoulder. And the way his head was turned in the picture, it looked like he was looking at me. So it was like, it was a cool moment. And I just started looking around the room, and I looked at the other pictures, and there were pictures of my mom and dad, and there were pictures of me and my mom and dad. And so I decided to, do what I needed to do to get the button sewed on. And my mom always used to bitch at my dad. I can remember arguments starting because my dad would always go to bed with either a glass of ice water or a glass of ice with Coke in it. And he
Yeah.
would set it on this ugly ass little end table that they had beside the bed. And it was uglier than hell. It was maybe 12-inch in diameter and it had a round part and then 3 legs. And then halfway down, there was another round part shelf and then a
Yeah.
third shelf at the bottom. And she would always bitch that there would be a white spot from the sweat of the glass because he'd never use a coaster or anything. And I got my button sewed on, put the stuff back in, and I went to grab the sewing kit to put it back down. And I looked, and that table, there was a half of a wet ring of water on the top shelf.
Yeah.
And inside that wet ring was the necklace.
Okay. What? That is okay. That is freaking insane.
Yeah.
I mean, you said pointed. That's not pointed. That is like the sharpest thing I've ever seen in my life pointed.
Yeah.
Now, so as far as it taking some time, I am a full believer there is no time frame. They can come and go as they please. Even if they pass on, they can come visit. They're free to do as they wish.
Mhm.
And it almost was so perfect that what he was doing, he was waiting for you to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Had you walked in there sooner, you would have never gone in that room. You would
Mhm.
have backed out if you were ready. It was just for you to the button fell off, ironically, on a new shirt. So that's a little do. But the fact that your mom was gone, so you went in, you sat in that exact spot at that exact time to look up, and he was right there. Hey,
Yeah.
here, I'm ready to talk to you, and you're good. And then here's this sign to say, if there's any question in your mind, I am here. And to me, like I said, I just feel if they want to, if you're open and you're sensitive and you have stuff like that going on, it's really no time constraints because like my kids, the oldest one, let's see here, he would have turned 15 this year. The twins would have turned 14. And so this has been a long time ago, and they still, even to the point where if you guys go, if you haven't, if you're not a patron, there's like a 7-day free trial. Go on there and look for the one I did with Stacy from early on Wednesdays. And this ball down here is specifically for them. And I was asking them to hit a ball and nothing was happening. And I was like, that's really weird. I was like, I feel like there's someone in here. So I opened my little spirit box and I was like, hey, can you please do this? And it kept saying, I'm trying. And I'm like, why can't you do it? And it kept saying too high, because the ball was up here.
No.
And I was like, okay. So I moved it down and then immediately it was like boom, boom, boom. And we stopped what we were doing and we probably had a good 10, 15-minute conversation with one of them. And it was actually the one that it was his birthday. Like it would have been his birthday that week. And we were asking because I was like, oh, are you a sibling? And hit the balls, yes, and nothing's no. And we even went to, are you under 10 years old? And are you like, so we're asking all these questions. And it was the last baby I lost. And it was giving me like a specific number and it was answering the question. And I'll be sometimes asleep and I'll be like on the couch and they are somewhat nice. Sometimes they just wake me up for no reason, but sometimes like I'll have a nightmare and I'll wake up because I sleep with a headband on with earphones in it. And I play sound on like as loud as I can get it as rain to calm my brain down so that I can sleep. And even with all that on, I'll hear, mommy, it sounds like it's right at the foot. And it's like, if you're on the recliner, the foot things up, you just can tell that voice is right next to your feet. Yep. And I'll just be like, mommy. And it just wakes me up. And I'm like, looking around, there's nobody there. And I'm like, okay. And they do that occasionally and they like to pull pranks. So I always know when it's them, but we're pushing 15 years ago. Yeah. And they're still there. I think they wait to show themselves either until they're ready and or until you're ready to receive it. Because you got to think they're in shock too. They're still dealing and probably coping. I believe that once you go, you're still coherent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to have these conversations over a spirit box or to set these light sensors off. And you wouldn't have the knowledge to do that or be able to hold a conversation or answer
Right.
questions. So they're probably like, oh crap, especially if it's sudden like that. Maybe he's figuring out like what's going on. One, what the hell happened to me? Two, then it's okay. Not everybody can hear, see, feel. They can't interact with me. So he might have tried with your mom, but maybe your mom's not sensitive. So he was spending all this time trying to talk to her or
Yeah.
somebody else that just wasn't getting anything. And then he's okay, I'll try him. I think he's ready now. He's now open. He doesn't have that block up. There's still a little there, but I feel like when that first initial thing sometimes happens, your energy gets clogged because you're in shock and you're trying to comprehend that. And sometimes some people they just naturally need more time to just digest what happens to flow that energy out and make it to where you can perceive it. And that's my kind of thing too, is sometimes I've had people where they're like, after a while, they're like, wait a minute, this stuff was happening the whole time and I just didn't pick up on it. And I'm like, maybe it's because you weren't ready.
Yeah.
And then they found the opportunity where it finally got in because you were able to be more aware of it at the time.
I don't have time to get into all of it, but that was not the first thing that I had experienced, but that was truly the one that pushed it over the edge.
Yeah.
That it made a lot of other things fall into place.
Mhm.
And I've always looked at it was never scary to me.
No.
It wasn't something that gave me, oh my God, what's going on? It was completely, I looked at it completely as a gift.
Mhm.
And as far as continuing, as long as I lived here through that point for about the next year and a half, I had several other things happen.
Yeah.
But at the time that the woman that I got engaged to and eventually married, at the point that she and I moved out of this house, that was it. It was
Yep.
done. Never another thing, not at any of our other houses, not at our apartment. And then after my divorce, I moved back in with my mom to take care of her because she was starting to get signs of dementia. And I've been back here for 10, 11 years and nothing more.
Interest pretty good on time. You're so probably to stop. I do definitely for sure want to have you on to do more of the experiences that you've had so that we can get a little deeper into that.
There's a lot.
Too, but I always laugh at it's now granted, I don't know. I'm like really sensitive to stuff. I don't always know how it works for other people. And sometimes I do. It's like when you encounter somebody that you know, they're familiar to you. It's you can tell when it's someone that you know and when it's somebody that's new. Like I had somebody pop in the other day and I was doing a spirit box session and I was like, something is not, I don't know this one. Like this one is not familiar to me. I don't know where it came from, who it is. And my spirit box gave me a name I'd never heard of before. So I was like, okay, I don't know you, but welcome to the show. My cat, you can't see him, but he's like literally right here. But I just feel like it's something like that too. And it is very comforting when you do have experiences with people that you did know and you have that connection with, because it's very, to me, I don't know about other people, but to me, it does seem very, I don't really want to say comforting would be a good word. It's very comforting. But that's not what we're here for today, right? We're comfortable.
Oddly enough, to me, it was a very comfortable feeling.
Yep. I have the same when I know it's my kids, even though it's the middle of the night and something's happening, I know it's them. And I'll be like, all right, guys, haha, joke's on mom. Let me go to sleep now. And then they'll let me sleep the rest of the night. But if I don't be like, okay, guys, stop. I get it. Can you do this during the day or whatever? But they're pretty receptive. But yeah, so definitely want to have you on for that. And again, Eric, thank you so much for being here because this has been awesome. I was like, what could be more uncomfortable than children being treated like fake creatures and tortured?
Yeah. Yeah, and I got to be honest with you. I am a pit bull But when it comes to my kids, when it comes to anybody's kids, a child, like mistreatment of any sort is something that
I
just cuts my legs out from underneath me.
I can't do it. And I tell people, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, if there's not a baby box around, like I will give you my address and you can just dump it and walk away because I will be more than happy because like I said, I wasn't even supposed to have mine. And
Yeah.
it was like all of the doctors were completely dumbfounded. And but then again, I physically cannot have any. We took everything out because I kept losing so many and they kept trying to kill me. So they just took it all out. So I'm like, there's nothing. So I'm like, I get one shot. And if you mess with my kid, I was like, and it's like anybody, it's like any kid in the vicinity, whether you're with me or not, like you're mine. Like I got a kid that was in a parking lot. I sell cars here in town. And it just so happened the parents turned their back to look at this car and the kid went to run. And I have no idea who this kid is, but I turned around and I was like, did my best mom voice, and I was like, get over here. And they both looked at me. They were like, they didn't even
Pay
realize
attention to your damn kid.
there was nobody in the lot. It was empty. It's just that I would rather have stopped him before he got too far where we couldn't
Right.
see him because we are right next to a highway. He was far away, but it was just funny because I'm like, if you're in the vicinity, you are mine. I will treat you like mine, and that's how it is. So I totally get you on this one. But everybody out there, again, like always, check the description because all of his links are going to be down there. Anything that I've got on him, you're going to be able to find it down there. It's going to have its own little section. It says guest links. So don't forget, follow, listen, share, 5-star reviews. We don't want that 1-star bullshit. 5 stars for this guy. Okay. So everybody do your part. Make sure you tune in. Is there anything that you would like to add, Eric, before we tune off?
Just appreciate the opportunity to come on here. It was a great talk with you, Natasha, and look forward to doing it again.
All right. Much appreciated. Till next time, everybody. I'll see ya.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cryptids, Creeps, and Conspiracy. If you wouldn't mind, please take a moment and rate and review the show wherever you're listening. I know it might not seem like much, but it greatly helps the show by allowing us to be found more easily when other listeners search for us. If you have a chance, head on over to www.patreon.com/Cryptids, Creeps, and Conspiracy and become a patron. Members of the Big Show tier get bonus materials, personalized shout-outs, access to the private Discord server, and video versions of episodes, both regular and members only, that are raw and unedited. So they're always a good time. As an added thank you to the Big Show patrons, we also are going to be giving out custom stickers and mini prints after 3 months of membership. I'm currently offering a 7-day free trial, so head on over and see how awesome being a member can be. Before you go, click the link in the description and grab yourself or someone you know some of the self-designed merch, or make a donation to help keep the show going and fund future events and investigations. T-shirts, hoodies, stickers, and magnets, as well as pants, swimwear, the best tumblers I have found yet as far as merch is concerned, dresses, office supplies, and more. Visit the Square merch store. You can also follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Threads, and TikTok. If you have any questions, topic recommendations, or personal encounters, please don't hesitate to send them in to cryptidscreepsandconspiracy@gmail.com or submit them through the contact form at www.cryptidscreepsandconspiracy.com. I would love to hear from you and share your experience on a special listener episode. Just make sure to specify that I have permission to add your encounter to the show, and let me know whether you would like to have your real name or an alias to maintain confidentiality. Thank you again so much for all your support, and I'll see you next time, my friend.